Yeah, mic is recording. Recording? Okay. So you can sync.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, on another episode here at the Cusp of Freedom, where we discuss why and how we become who we are as digital nomads, so you can get a perspective on different things you can do to be like us or better. On this episode, I have a very special friend. I'll let her introduce herself so she can tell you her name, where she's from, and what she does as a digital nomad.
Hey, thank you for having me here. I'm Sylvia. I come from Spain, and I make podcast. We're actually recording from my podcast from my mic, my recording studio. So yeah.
So Sylvia, how long have you been a digital nomad as a podcaster?
I've been a podcaster for over 2 years,
Okay.
I would say. Yeah.
What is your podcast about, and why did you decide to pursue podcasting?
Well, right now I'm working mainly on my meditation podcast. It's mainly like guided meditations, positive affirmations, and this kind of things. It's in Spanish. It's called Metaconciencia. And I also have like a narrative podcast about my family history,
Okay.
which is called La Abuela de las Tres Guerras, the grandmother of the three wars. So I studied journalism and film studies,
Okay.
and I was always really passionate about sound and like I was thinking about getting into radio, but everybody was like, don't do that, like the radio industry is really bad right now and like there's no much opportunities. So then when I was studying, I found out about podcast, and I was like, wow, this is really cool. And I got really into like narrative podcasts, so mainly like telling stories through sound. So when I finished university, I applied to this like contest, international contest for podcast, and I was selected as the Spanish winner. So I got to produce La Abuela de las Tres Guerras.
Okay.
And then more or less at that same time, I started creating my own meditation podcast, and that's the one I'm working right now.
Oh wow, that sounds so inspiring. Speaking of inspiration, do you have any inspiration that you look up to regarding to podcast production? Like, did you listen to podcasts and got some inspiration, or did you just like get inspiration from your passion with production?
Yeah, both. Yeah, I got inspired mainly by narrative podcasts. So like also in Spanish, but in English, like all that it's like NPR and like Radiotopia and all these like really cool sound podcasts. And then, for example, there's a podcast in English that is called Meditative Stories, which is mainly like stories, but with like mindfulness and like inspiring stories related with mindfulness, and that's really inspiring for me as well. So there's a bunch of podcasts that I listen to that, of course, inspire me a lot, and then of course just like producing them and like just see what it works and like how can you make it better just every day.
That sounds good. When you were a kid, let's take a step back a little bit. When you were younger, did you envision yourself being a journalist, or did you envision yourself becoming something podcast related when you were younger, or what did you want to be as a kid?
For many years, I wanted to be a biologist.
Okay.
It has nothing to do. Yeah, it's really funny because I was thinking about becoming a biologist, and then in high school I took like a radio class, and I realized I was really good at it. I don't know, and like it was mainly like just doing like or like using your creativity to like do some sound productions and things like that. I really enjoyed that class, and then with that class we went to the radio, one of the most important radios in Spain, which is Cadena Ser, and we got there, and as like when I was there I was like, wow, this is amazing. I don't know what it is, but I want to be doing this.
Okay.
So then I think that made me choose to be a journalist. I always loved writing, so it made sense. Like I love, when I was a kid, I used to like write stories, and even I wrote a book when I was like 10 years old.
Oh wow.
So,
So do you attribute your passion for storytelling to your like natural ability to want to write and want to be artistic, I guess, in a sense? Would you say that you identified those characteristics that made it make sense for you to pursue podcasting?
Yeah, definitely. So like I've always loved like telling stories, like yeah, writing stories and thinking about imagine different worlds. And then for some reason that I always felt really attracted to sound. Also like not only podcast and radio, but also like music. I love music. I play instruments, so there was something about sound that I was really like attracted to. And then when I realized I could join both and like tell stories and the sound at the same and use the sound at the same time, I was like, okay, I think this is my thing.
I think it is your thing. It makes complete sense that you put those attributes together. Um, so when you were younger growing up, your parents had no influence over what you became. They didn't like force you to go to college to pursue journalism. They pretty much encouraged you to pursue everything you wanted to pursue.
Yeah, I think I was really lucky with my with my parents because they never like pushed me to do something I didn't want to do. They were always really supportive. Um, so actually, when I told them I want to be a journalist, they were like, okay, like if that's what you would like to do, go for it. So yeah, I didn't feel any kind of pressure that way. I was
Yeah, some of us that come from certain different backgrounds, our parents want us to be engineers, doctors, or lawyers or whatever. Do you think if your parents would have pushed that narrative onto you, would you have been stubborn enough to continue towards your path, or would you have probably succumbed to?
I think I'm pretty stubborn, so and I'm really independent. I feel like I guess my parents grew me like to be pretty independent, so that's part of their fault. But yeah, I feel like I've always tried to do what I want to do, and like I don't really care what other people like. It's not okay. Yeah, I haven't had. I was really lucky, so I haven't had like really pushy parents who like told me what to do. So I can't tell what I would have done in that situation.
Yeah.
Maybe I would have started something that I didn't like, and then realized it was not for me, and then changed to what I really liked. So it might have taken more time, but I think at the end I would have ended up doing what I want.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Makes sense. Wow. Do you think I don't know. When you started off podcasting, did you envision yourself traveling as a podcaster, or did that just like happen to happen during COVID or after COVID, that there was more opportunity to travel and do podcasting?
Yeah, I always thought about traveling around. And there was a time in my life when I was really into van, and my Instagram was just van life, van life. So like, yeah, and I guess that's also part of like how I grew up. So like, we used to go on holidays a lot of like road trips, like camping and these things. And both my brother and me are really adventurous, and my brother has also like traveled around the world a lot. So I guess that was just part of how we grew up. And yeah, that was part of the dream. I knew I wanted to like have some kind of job that allowed me to travel around and just like be wherever I felt like I wanted to be.
That sounds amazing. Do you think that traveling and doing your job poses a certain level of difficulty that needs some like finesse, or do you think for the most part it's like straightforward? You just like travel, you record your podcast, and there's no hiccup. So is there like any challenges that that come up because you have to travel while you do your job, or does it make your job easier when you travel?
So the main challenge while traveling is recording, of course, like finding a good place for recording. I'm, as I was telling you before, I'm like a sound freak, so like I want sound quality to be really good. So for that, like when I at home, I like get into my closet and record there, or like go underneath a blanket or something. So like I want really really good quality, and especially for guided meditations, I feel like it's really like the quality has to be good, so it doesn't distract the people. And if there's like a dog barking or something, you don't want it in a guided meditation. So yeah, that's one of the most difficult parts, like finding quiet places to record.
Yeah.
but I mean, I always figure it out on the way. And then, of course, while traveling, the other part is that you get to know many inspiring people. So there's like a lot of inspiration while traveling that I wouldn't have if I was at home. So I think that also helps making the podcast better. So it's
Okay.
a mix.
So you would say there's more of a pro than a con when it comes to traveling and recording, because you can definitely find a place, but you can't really find the people if you stay in one place.
I think it would be more comfortable staying in one place, but it actually makes it better to travel.
Okay, perfect, perfectly said. So let's talk a little bit about what you do or what your podcast is about. Guided meditation. What is guided meditation to somebody watching wanting to be like you? If you could explain to a 5-year-old what guided meditation is, how would you define? How would you define that? How would you inspire them to want to pursue guided meditation?
To start making their own guided meditation
Yeah,
podcast,
if they're, if yeah, like what would you tell them guided meditation is? And maybe they feel inspired and want to do the same thing. I don't know.
okay. So mainly a guided meditation, as the name says, is like guiding someone in a meditation. So
What's meditation?
for me, meditation is a way of taking control of your mind and like just be aware of what is going on in your mind, in your body, in the world in general. So a guided meditation is like you help someone to get to that state of like consciousness, right?
Yeah.
So so yeah, that's basically it. Like in my podcast, it's like guided meditations, but also like positive affirmations, like motivational quotes. So like I find like different quotes from different people and make like a recopilation and make an episode from that, for example. Then some like positive affirmations, so like from different topics. So like to start the day or to end up the day, or when before an exam, or like I do it for different situations, so like people can listen to it whenever they need it. And same with the guided meditations, there are one for each moment in the day, or like time in life, or like different things, so I try to be like to do like as many different scenarios as possible, so like it fits for whatever the listener is going through.
Yeah, I think meditation is one of those things that everyone should practice, but I think in our world we tend to have a lot of distractions. So how do you tailor how do you approach that problem of like there are many people out there that would like to learn how to meditate but are constantly distracted by things around them. Do you have like any meditative advice for those type of people? I don't know.
Yeah, so no, it's really interesting because it's a growing niche. So like, so more people are getting into the mindfulness world and like meditation world. So more and more people are getting interested in that and like realizing how important it is to take care of yourself and spend some time just like feeling how you feel. So my main advice would be like just start consistent, but like slowly, like 2 minutes a day can be great for starting, but every day just getting the habit of 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes. It sounds like not that much, but like actually meditating 5 minutes a day, it can make a big impact on you. So, and just getting the habit and not trying to meditate like 30 minutes and then after 3 days you're like, oh, I can't do this anymore.
All right. Before we dive into like the technical aspect of your podcasting, how long have you been meditating for?
More or less the same as my podcast, like the same.
The same time.
Yeah. So like, I started the podcast when I was starting meditating, just a way of like sharing with other people what I was learning, because it was really helping me.
Yeah.
And it was like, yeah, during pandemic times, so many people around me were like sad or depressed, and I was like, okay, maybe this helps them like just feeling better. And then more and more people started listening to it, and suddenly I was like, oh wow, like people are actually listening to it. And then I started like thinking about it more seriously. But it was, at the beginning, it was just a way for me to share what I was learning, and I think it's being like that. So it's been like the podcast shows what I've been learning during these 2 years. So like I'm not a professional meditator or like So like I just whatever I learn, I teach it, and it's just showing everything that I keep learning. So that's one of the things. Like you don't need to be professional to start this.
Wow, that's really good advice. Really, really awesome advice. Um, so yeah, as you, what would you say is the one thing that you've learned over the years that's like very significant to, um, like what are some things that you've learned, I guess, over the years?
One of the things that I always have in mind is a quote that I read in a book from Robert Rodriguez, I think it's called Rebel Without a Crew. Is called in the book, and he said he's a movie director, and he says you can expect to make a good movie. Like to have your first movie to be a good movie. You have to do 10 movies until you get to a good movie, right? So it's better to do those 10 movies as soon as possible,
Yes,
till
so
you can till you
tell.
can get to that good movie, right? So like just go through it. Like of course your first, if you talk about podcasts, your first episode is not going to be great. The second probably it's not going to be great, but then slowly you're going to become better. And like the faster you do it, then the faster you're going to get to be better. And then I was like, okay, I don't know, that really like,
Is that the quote that got you started with the podcast?
yeah, that's one of the quotes that got me started with so many projects that I have, and like the podcast is one of them. Yeah, I read it when I was at university, and then from there, yeah, then I started the podcast. And for example, now that I'm starting to like work on the Instagram account, I have always that thing in mind. Like, yeah, the first reel is not gonna be great, the second is not gonna be great, but you know,
Eventually,
yeah, I'll get
definitely.
better. It's
That's
okay. Like
absolutely-
whatever in life, I really like that quote. Yeah.
That's really absolutely true. Wow. So speaking of developing a podcast, when you started off your podcast, are there any tips, whether it's like tools you use, approaches you take? Are there any tips you can give to someone who would like to start a podcast? Maybe even it doesn't even have to be minded meditation because a podcast is a podcast. Is there any like tips or advice that you would give anyone that would like to start a podcast?
In line with what I just said is just start doing it. Like you have right now, if you have a phone, you have everything you need to start a podcast. Especially if you have an iPhone. iPhone have so good like mic quality. Like the mic of the iPhones is so good that you can just start with that actually, and just like try to find a quiet place and just record. It's better to record in your room with some soft things. If you go inside like a closet, then it's perfect. But you know, like if you record, like for example, this makes the quality better. Like some soft.
Okay, I didn't know that. I just learned something today.
Yeah. Yeah. So just like there's so much information online, but just don't get overwhelmed. Just start doing it. There's like free hosting that you can use. For example, Anchor is free. Like you can just start for free. Like with your phone and the free hosting, like that's all you need to start. And then just start, and then you can become better. Like slowly, you'll like maybe you buy a mic, maybe once your podcast start growing, moves to like a pay hosting because it gives you more options. But you can do that later. You don't need to have all that figured out
Immediately,
before starting.
Wow, that's amazing advice. Wow. Okay, so now that we discussed why and how you became a podcaster, let's dive a little bit into your digital nomad realm a little bit. So, as a digital nomad, would you say, could you identify some cons to being a digital nomad?
Cons. Like for working or like just in life. Like
I guess like, what do you think are some of like the pain points of being a digital nomad? So that if somebody wants to be a podcaster and a nomad, they understand like what challenges to expect, like what are the hardships that you've had to go through.
Yeah.
Because we know that there's a lot of benefits, so we'll get to that in a second. But like,
Okay.
what are some of the
So, for example, one that I am experiencing right now is that it's difficult sometimes when you're traveling and there's so much things going on to focus on something right now. Like right now, I'm working on like launching my premium community and all these things, and like I really feel like I need some weeks of just like focusing on that. And when you're at home, it's easier. You just you're at home and then you don't see your friends for a few weeks and that's it. I can do that. But when you're traveling, it's way more difficult because there are like cool things going on. Everybody's like, let's go, like check out this place, this other place. And you're like, yes, I want to, but at the same time, I want to focus on this. So like you have to be like really, to have a lot of self-discipline to like actually like get things done.
That's a really good one. I can't add much on that. I think discipline is definitely a very big one, part of the independence aspect that we get as nomads, right? So, as now that we discussed the cons, what are some pros of being a nomad? What do you think are some of the benefits of traveling and working and developing yourself? Like, what do you think are some of the benefits of that?
Well, of course, like I was saying before, just like the inspiration, all the inspiration that you get from other people traveling, other people who like live in different places and their lives, like that, like of course, give you so much inspiration that like helps you develop your project and also you as a person, right? And just being able, like the freedom that it gives you to just like be wherever you want to be. Because it doesn't mean like being a digital nomad doesn't mean like you need to be traveling all the time or that you need every week you need to change places. Sometimes you find a nice place that you like and you stay there for a few months. And that's great. And that like sometimes you need that. Like when you travel, like true. It's not sustainable to be traveling every week to new place. Then you need to figure out how things work there. Where is the nearest supermarket? Like everything, it takes time to like get used to a place. So just like, but it gives you freedom. So if you decide to stay half a year, 1 year, 2 years in some place, you can do it. But then whenever you feel like you want to keep moving, you can move, right?
Wow, that is such a perfect answer. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, so now that we've discussed why and how you became who you are as a podcaster and some pros and cons of being a digital nomad, do you think that the world would be a better place if more people became nomads? Or do you think that, like, what do you think the effect of more people becoming a nomad would be on, like, the developing population? And what do you think the effect of not many or not enough people becoming nomads would be?
Okay, well, I think people who become a digital nomad are usually happier than people who are stuck in one place that they don't want to be. Like there's some people who love their job and love where they are, and that's great. But for those who like actually don't like where they are living or like would like to to experience more things, like being a digital nomad allows them doing that, so it makes them happier. So that means they'll like if they're more digital nomads, they'll be more happy people, and that'll be better for the world, right?
What would that mean for like the locals, for example?
Oh, that's also a really interesting thing. More digital nomads mean more like
gentrification.
Yeah, gentrification. More people who are not from a place coming to like places where local people live. So I think as a digital nomad, we should be like conscious about the impact we're having on local communities. And instead of like having a bad impact, trying to have a good impact. For example, instead, like if you go to a place, try to eat local instead of going to like, like if you go to Mexico, don't try to eat like sushi or like Thai food. Just like go to local places and eat what they eat, right?
Wow, that's
like
really good advice.
Don't go to a place and expect them to have like services you would expect at home, but they don't have them there, right? Just like try to adapt to a place instead of the place adapting to you. I think that's a bit of the responsibility we have as digital nomads.
Yeah, I definitely second that. I think that's a very powerful point of view. And what do you think would happen if not enough people would become digital nomads, given that, digital nomad as a term not only means that you can work remote, but it also gives you a sense of like independence, and it means like you're more disciplined, you're independent, disciplined. What do you think will happen if not enough people become independent and disciplined? Where do you think the world would go then? I don't know.
I mean, I don't know. I think the way we're of working is changing, and like we're just like, I have the feeling like new generations like don't really get the idea of our parents of just being our whole life working in a place, like in an office 8 hours a day for the rest of your life, right? So like I guess if that continues that way, it's just gonna make a lot of people unhappy. I know so many people who are like stressed and unhappy because of that situation, because they're just like they feel stuck. And of course you feel stuck if you are like doing the same job and that it's gonna be like that for the rest of your life. I would like I don't know. So like I just I think that's changing, and I think digital nomads or like the internet and all these other possibilities of like how to like earn money is like helping so many people to like find other ways of doing things. I remember when I was like a few years ago when I was still at school, talking with a friend, and I was like, I just don't want to be in an office, for the rest of my life. And she was like, so what are you gonna do? Yeah, I remember that moment so clearly because she was like,
there's no other way.
Yeah, she was basically like, so I mean, that's what it's gonna be. And I was like, no, I didn't know about digital nomad. I didn't know about podcasts. So I didn't, I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm
not gonna do that.
Yeah, exactly. At least I knew what I didn't want. So from there, I am really happy I got to figure out.
Wow.
But
That's very powerful. You got a very powerful perspective, yo. True. Well, yeah. Now that we've discussed it, why and how you did that, and the benefits and cons of being a nomad. Do you have any life philosophy that you live by besides that quote of starting? The quicker you fail, the quicker you get where you want to go. Do you have any life philosophy you live by that someone can take with them?
Yeah, that's one of the biggest one. And then just like do your best and but don't like don't push yourself where you can't go. Like just like do your best and be happy with it. Just like.
So if you had any last keyword of advice, you would just.
I think I used mine already with that.
I mean, you can still say it because it's the title.
Yeah.
Try the earlier you fail.
Yeah, just start, because the earlier you start, the earlier you're gonna get where you want to go.
And do your best.
Wow.
Well, I want to thank you so much, Sylvia. This is like a wonderful episode. I think you've given a lot of gems. And I hope that for the audience watching, please take everything here with a grain of salt. Remind you that we all come from different backgrounds and have different experiences, but we all can relate and resonate with one another. So yeah, take it with a grain of salt. And I hope this inspires you to become a podcaster. And even more, I hope it inspires you to pursue podcasting and meditative, assistive meditative, guided meditation. But yeah, it's been an immense pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. And thank you for listening.